Hey, it's Chris. He's got a Diet Coke sitting there. You know it's going to be a spicy video. What are we talking about? June crowdfunding. This is going to be the best month of the year so far. Biggest month. Let's go. June has it all. What do you need to know? What am I interested in? What should you be interested in? No FOMO zone. You're entering it. Let's go. First up. Talked about it in the news video the other week. Well, I mean, Grimcoven. Awaken Realms is bringing us Grimcoven. Stuff's leaking out already at the time of me filming this. It's spurting out left and right and left and right and left and right. And are you going to FOMO? And how many miniatures are there going to be? And what sort of boss battling epic adventure can they give us? Are they going to distill the Kingdom Death Aeon Trespass Odyssey down into a Townsfolk Tussle situation, right? That's what people want. They want Townsfolk Tussle with a slight increased degree of difficulty and complexity. Am I right? I have my finger on the pulse of the dungeon crawl scene, right? But is it gonna enrapture you, enthrall you, and grab your wallet? That's gonna be the question, right? How many expansions do you expect to come with it? How many pages is the rulebook gonna be? Because that's my biggest concern, right? You know, I can spend $150. I can spend $250. I can have 4 boxes, right? I don't want another 50-page rulebook. I was just reading a couple nights ago for the roundup, the Genesis Clan Wars rulebook, right? Skirmish style. But everything has to have its own, description. It has to have its own explanation. Everything has to have its own unique spin. Everything has to be, complicated up the wazoo nowadays, right? When one mechanic will suffice, 3 is what we get. And that's across the board, which is why, sometimes less is more. There's a reason games like Earth have been succeeding. 1, broader market, but 2, you know what? Every game doesn't need metal coins or miniatures. Team standee. So what I'm concerned about, though, is just the overhead of the game like this, right? Because when I make the comparison of Townsfolk Tussle, you go, okay, I understand this. The mechanisms are simple. The gameplay is where the depth is, not the rule book. And that's going to be a big conundrum for several of these games we're going to talk about in this video. Again, price be darn sure that it's going to be triple digits on some of these, but are you darn sure you can actually get it to the freaking table? Again, I do this conversation every single time when one of these comes around now, because they're a dime a dozen. A dime a dozen. Just pretend for a second, right? Pretend for a second when this launches, it does not have Awaken Realms after it. You go in there like that, then are you as intrigued? Are you as interested? Do the mechanics hold you that much? Mechanics! Whew. Right? But that's where I feel like you have to look at, right? Your miniatures are going to be awesome. The aesthetic is going to be second to none. But is it the gameplay in combination with the stuff you actually freaking love combined with I can actually freaking get this to the table? Like, that is the biggest Aeon Trespass Odyssey barrier right now, right? Love that game. Freaking awesome. Hard to get to the table. Madara, same thing. Frosthaven, same thing. So, it might be the best game of the year. Might be the biggest crowdfunder of all time. Just kidding. It's not going to be, but it's going to raise. If this doesn't raise $5 to $7 million, color me shocked. But that is where my head is at with that one. And that's why we have to talk about it. Secondly, we're just going to stay with this theme for a second here. Miniatures. We're going to go slight adjacent, and then we're going to come back. Launching on the same week, we have Mythic Battles Egypt. Mythic, I'm just calling it that. It's not what the name is, but it's Mythic Battles Egypt Pantheon, if you will. It's a great game by all accounts. It is probably the most undercovered, underrated, 2-player asymmetric, head-to-head dueling style-ish game in the whole hobby scene. With how well it is thought of overall. It's also one of the biggest anchors in terms of getting it to the table in the first place. And that's probably why. That's probably why I gravitate more towards the card-based ones nowadays. That's why a couple of my expansions are still in shrink from the first crowdfunding campaign. Second, actually. But, you know, the original Pantheon. So that's the conundrum. It's not that Monolith has any sort of bad product. It's not that Monolith hasn't supported this well. It's not that Monolith isn't trusted to put out a fantastic game. But how much of a good thing can you have? And truth be told, I would make the argument, again, not going to point the finger there, always pointing the finger back at me first. Whenever I make these criticisms, I am always going to look at myself in the mirror, point at myself first, and say, I have too much of that freaking crap. Right? How many times do you hear that on board game channels, right? I have too much of this game. I can't get any more. I feel like those are words I never hear. Hardly ever. I'm sure other people actually say them. It's hyperbole, folks. But that's what I mean, though, is right? Every month. Okay, these are the best games you got to buy this month. Okay, these are the best games you got to buy on crowdfunding this month. You know, again, this video is not, these are the games you have to buy. It's these are the games that are going to catch your attention, but you only buy them if they're absolutely and utterly right for you at the place of where you're at right in your life right now, and you can get to the table and play and love and have fun with, as I recently said in a couple other videos. Are you having fun still? You know? And people are going to go in the comment section. They always do, right? Like, oh, Chris is, you know, he's anti-buying games. He's mad at what? No. I'm passionate about this, right? Because I'm passionate about you getting stuff for you. Not getting marketed, not getting FOMO'd, not getting squeezed and ending up with this, right? Right? 50 game collection. I think that's more than enough. Ooh, them fighting words right there in the comment section. I think 50 games is more than you would ever need in a lifetime. Right? Prove me wrong. But that's the main question, right? They're going to do cool stuff. They're bringing back a bunch of other stuff. I mean, I think this Pantheon is cool. I think there's a lot of potential with this. Creep. Again, complexity, overhead. You know, when you see new expansions like this, it's really easy to add on top. It's really hard to go this way with complexity because of balance issues, right? And that's going to be the big conundrum with this one as a whole. The other one, we're going to go, again, shifting back. At the end of the month, now also shifting to the other end of the spectrum in terms of dates, Odalin, Dungeons of Doom, from the folks who brought you Teneris, the Teneris adventures, right? Dragori Games is back with a different spin on their dungeon crawl-esque, and you know, Teneris is really well thought of, but again, it's one of those lifestyle games. Make the argument that all three of these games so far are lifestyle games. In case you're new to this channel, in case you haven't heard me rant on this, lifestyle, people look at lifestyle and they say, well, you know, it has to be a campaign, it has to be a crawl, it has to be expansive, legacy, whatever. No, it means that most likely my criteria, triple digits, then also it's going to take you, you know, dozens of hours to play through. And there is more amount of content than you will ever actually get played, right? Fitting at least, we'll say at least two of those three. I make it up as I go in case you're new to this channel. So this is another one of those. You are making pacts with demon lords, combining attacks with your demons, and, you know, having unique gameplay for each hero that you're using. Yeah, exploring dungeons. Now, exciting loot system based on the Board Game Geek description, right? Items are unusual, make real impact on the powers. You're going to have a moral dilemma driven campaign, and your choices are going to shape the ending. Okay. Again, this, I know they actually sent me the rulebook. I know this one's thick. So that's going to be the question, right? I love the idea of uniqueness. I love the idea of innovation. Don't you? It also is one of the scariest words on our hobby side. It's one of the scariest words on crowdfunding, because innovation, right? It means they're doing something new, essentially. It means if it's truly innovative, which I see that word a lot too on crowdfunding pages, and I'm like, nah, it's not that innovative. But if it's truly innovative and you're utilizing that word correctly, my mother, the English teacher, would be very proud of you then, that it's also something you haven't done, you haven't played before as a consumer, right? And there's enough games that I'm sure you own, you played, and you go, man, this mechanism sounds so cool. Oh, I like this mechanic as a whole in this game. I'm going to play, and whoops, I didn't like it. Why didn't I like it? And that's sometimes stuff that you think you're going to like because you've already played stuff similar. And now you do something different, right? High risk, high reward. And scope. I mean, these guys, are out there with Awaken Realms in terms of their scope and size. So, boom, you're going to get your money's worth, but you're going to get money's worth, both in terms of price and content. So, I'm talking about you. I'm running out of room. My wife is getting upset at me. So, that is also launching at the end of the month. The one right in the middle of the month, okay, 2 right in the middle of the month, okay, 3 right in the middle of the month, that have me a little bit peaked, Piqued. So those are a combination of a little bit of everything else. Unstoppable! Coming from Renegade Game Studios, a cooperative deck builder. And it's by John DeClaire, right? Now, I'm a little bit concerned because I didn't think this was what it was on Board Game Geek, but at the time of me filming this and looking this up, it now actually says 1 to 2 players. And that worries me because I was thinking this was like a 2 to 4 player. Solo, cooperative, roguelite, light, not like, to be very clear on the wording there. Momentum building, deck building game. Card crafting, deck building, unlimited threats. Maintaining momentum to become the unstoppable force meets the unmovable object. And that's what essentially this game is going for. There's already a couple of preview videos out there. I was really hoping to get in a preview of this one, but this is going to be, I think, very hyped up. The hyping of it on some of these videos is already clearly there in terms of emphasizing how sci-fi fantastic this is, right? I want to see what they can do with this. I'm really intrigued. This, again, screams mechanically speaking, thematically speaking, something that would be up my ilk. But at the same time, I don't know, because it's clicking all those keywords, right? It's got the good time frame, 30 to 90 minutes. I mean, it's a deck builder, so it can't have too many, overhead-wise rules, right? So how do you do that? Although, I guess, Imperium, that whole Classics Legends thing, that rule book made me... So I guess you can kind of do it wrong sometimes, but just teasing. I get flack every time I talk about Imperium like that. And there's a couple comments that actually define what the momentum is more like. Not just an action-based combo system, but card draw is entirely player-driven, as it says. And you're getting rid of, and this is maybe the big unique key, depending on how you feel about this, the hand, play, redraw cycle of things is gone. And the only way you draw cards is by doing your actions, defeating the bad guys, and then getting cards back that way. So if you fail to maintain your card draw... well, right? So that's what they're going for. And that intrigues me. I like that style of things. So, yeah, I like it. I like it. The other one I'm super interested in, and we're going to see where this goes because this is launching in the middle of the month too. Flames of Fafnir. Fafnir, the dragon who shoots fireballs, represented by marbles, but not like Fireball Island, only cooler because this is going to be a little bit tower defense. Not only are you going to be dealing with dragons, other mythological creatures, monsters, slaying them, trolls, giants, spiders are guarding sites where you get those runes, those ever so helpful runes. They're going to help you claim the things that you need to kill Fafnir in the first place, right? You're going to do resource management, barricades, watchtowers, and trenches to reduce the carnage that he's going to be causing to you while wielding these powerful artifacts to move around and gain glory and, finally win. Now, this is going to be the tricky part, right? This is going to be a little tricky here. Opportunistic hero can join Fafnir. They get to ride the dragon, turning on the other heroes. Semi-co-op? Okay. Jumping the dragon here. Shark, jump the shark. Anyway, did you know where that's actually from? Are you old enough to know that that's the Fonz jumping the shark literally in the show? Anyway, I saw that episode because my parents, holy cow, this is a video, right? I'm leaving that in there because it's what you get on this channel. My parents loved Happy Days. The Fonz. Hey! So, Arthur Fonzarelli. Go look it up. And that's what we're going to see with this one. I'm intrigued. Again, gimmicky mechanic. But, again, I don't say those as bad words. I say that as, gonna get me a couple eyeballs extra from that side of things. Then we're going to go over with Horrible Guild because they've now given us a mismatching of their roll and write in a tile laying form of railroad tiles of the ink variety, now in cardboard form. You're building a transportation network and putting cars, trains, and travelers on it. Only now with your pattern building tile placement style of things. 8 rounds, draft your tiles, place them in front of you, and make as many connections. And place all the little things that I just said on there in the first place, as long as you got the space to do so. And the available actions are going to be changing round to round, so plan accordingly. I'm intrigued. Now, with Horrible Guild's other non-Railroad inks, there hasn't been as much incentive. I mean, the Horrible Guild Railroad Ink one with like the 28 different expansions that they offered previously. I mean, again, you know, I kind of want to see what this can do, and I think you could layer the layers of this game with a couple modules, a couple mini expansions, a couple whatevers to make it family friendly, but also a bit heavier. But there's no information otherwise out at this time. So we're going to see in the middle of the month what this one actually entails and whether or not it's worth on crowdfunding or if you're going to be picking it up sort of a la a secondary market like Sagrada Artisans-esque, if you will. Then let's go back to the beginning of the month because it's another huge name launching the same week as Mythic Battles and Grimcoven, the grimmest of covens. I can't help myself sometimes. I'm sorry, folks. 7th Citadel, Serious Pulp. They signed the deal over with Kickstarter, and we're going to see what this comes back with more stuff. I have a copy. I'm not sure my review will be out before that launches, but it's going to be an interesting test because everyone says so far it's better than the 7th Continent. And, you know, 7th Continent is like the literal choose your own adventure tile flip 'em up game with some resource management. And as someone who has, at the time of me filming this, not dove into 7th Citadel, but was not as pleased with 7th Continent, I think it's going to be a very interesting test for me about what I like about it and what I don't like about it. As I talked about, even with Earth, right? When I talked about the Abundance review, when I talked about the base game, I always look for these games to give me, you know, something that I, you know, wasn't finding the first time. And I'm always willing to give stuff a second chance. So that's what this one I'm, you know, looking at through the lens of, essentially, right? How is this, or can this change my mind? Right? Because just because I don't like a game to begin with, you can have it grow on you over time. Dice Throne. I did not like Dice Throne the first 2 or 3 times I played it. I sold my Season 1 and my Season 2, including the battle chest from Season 2. Marvel came out. Kid got it. Guess what? I'm a big fan now. And so that's how I feel about things. Earth, it grew on me. Ba-doom. And so those are the reasons I do this hobby too. And I always say, you know, my number one piece of advice for anyone starting out, looking at things, trying to find out what they're interested in, what to buy, what should I buy next? You see those posts on Reddit all the time, right? The truth of the matter is you just go out and play stuff. Just go out and play stuff because, you know, the best part about some of this is finding the stuff that you didn't think you were going to like or that you shouldn't have liked, that you loved, right? Castles of Burgundy is the classic example of that for me. I put off playing that game, acquiring a game like that for years. It's fantastic. Did not expect to like it nearly as much as I did. And that's how I look at something like this. And that's why I say, okay, let's try it out again. You know what? I'm willing to fall on my sword. Fell on my sword with Earth, right? I'm okay with that. I am a horribly imperfect person and horribly subjective and biased. And so I have no problem saying, oh, well, I was wrong. We teach that to our kids all the time. We say, you need to learn how to say, I was wrong. I'm sorry. We model it to them when we screw up. And so I modeled it on this channel. Hey, I screwed up. I'm sorry. Hey, longtime subscribers are like, they're shaking their heads vigorously. This guy screws up all the time. Pronunciations, rules, just listing out 3 or 4 things. And you know what? I go, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm doing my best. And I'm going to try and do better. That's what I say every time. So I don't know how, this is what you get on this channel. Side tangent. Then, you know what? We'll go back over to the end of the month again. We're flipping all over the place. Lupus Magnus, blood. Well, you know what? This is an interesting counterpoint, right? It makes me think of, and you'll get where I'm going with this in a second, when we had Monster Hunter the board game, a la versus Primal, the Awakening, right? And people were like, this is Monster Hunter, this is what I want. But oh, Primal came first, and look at, I think this is what Primal is, kind of mimicking and got the aesthetic of and giving me vibes of, right? And people were like, yeah. And then they went, I'm Team Primal, I'm Team Monster Hunter. Well, Grimcoven, meet Blood. Boss battler from Lupus Magnus, 1 to 4 players. You're fighting Vlad. Yeah, Vlad, right? I want to drink your blood. So we're getting customizable cards, unique monster hunters, innovative, we just talked about that, dice and card system to face horrors from Vlad's castle until you reach the master. So it's like Castlevania the boss battler, essentially, right? Raid, deploy unique strategies, locations, ever-changing combo situations. And in between, you return to the village of Bran Stoker. Anyway, epic weapons, building them, new fighting techniques. So, right? Hoo boy. You're going to have a type? You're going to get both of them? Which one are you going to get? Who you like better, right? Can you afford both? You can afford both. Who am I kidding? Go get them both. Wouldn't forgive myself if I didn't also talk about this one. Bitewing just announced that... Again, hype me up, baby, right? Knizia Games, Bitewing, I have a type, Ecor and Iliad. Now, again, one is a remake, one is a new one. Ecor here is outwitting an asymmetric strategic battle between Greek gods and monsters. One side's the gods, one side's the monsters. All you do is move your figure in a straight line as far as you can. You leave a trail of tokens behind you as you pass over them. Can't move onto a space containing another figure. Replace your opponent's tokens, though, as you move over them. Once all the spaces are filled, game's over. Who's ever got the most tokens? But, of course, you got your unique asymmetric abilities once per game. Advanced gameplay expansion gets powerful gate tiles, more gods and monsters to go along with it, reinforcements and gates expansions, which is going to be probably the, more incentivized to get it on the crowdfunding, and 50 possible million setups. 2 game boards, okay, 24 characters, okay, 8 gate tiles. Boom. Your boy's got a type. And then, can't be forgotten, Iliad going up head to head. As you're just laying tiles down next to each other. 1 to 5 strength, that's it. Creating rows, creating columns. Triggering abilities of ones when you lay them and potentially affecting those around them as well. When a row or column's filled, well, there's 2 tokens sitting at the end there. They're going to give you bonuses. Person with the most strength in said gets to choose which one they want. 5 gods, you have to get the most favor. But do you go for the victory points? Do you go for the favor of the gods? Do you go for the bonuses in terms of abilities or one-time effects? Okay. You know what? And no one meets those exact qualifications. Well, then points are going to matter. So they've got a little tactical, tough trade-off there as a whole at the end. So, I mean, this is what they're calling the Mythos Collection, 2-player dueling games from Bitewing, right? Like I said, I got to type, of the 2 of these off the top of my head, I'm going to give the edge to Ecor just off, surface value. But I'll have a video out. They're sending me the copies of the prototypes to be able to play again to show you guys and tell you all about it a little bit more in that sense. Then I would be amiss if I didn't also mention, and by the way, that one's launching at the end of the month, I think the 25th for Bitewings, Wormwood, or formerly known as Wormwood, Sovereign the Fall of Wormwood, as they've renamed it slightly, as an asymmetric faction-based, almost lane battling, trying to score echoes, points, victory points, based on a constructive deck asymmetric effort with double-sided cards as you go head to head. 30 unique asymmetric cards, 20 echoes that you're going to be utilizing in order to create them, gather them, or steal them from your opponent on one of 2 halves of your board, either more of your construction or your, playing side of things. And as you go head to head with these unique asymmetric factions, you go until, somebody outdoes their opponent. It reminds me very much, as I said in the video news roundup from yesterday, the head-to-head dueler a little bit in the sense of Singularity.exe or Singularity from the end of last year, November, on crowdfunding over on GameFound, just because it's doing something you've seen before, but it's doing it with a different twist. So, a little bit of both of those gives it, a really reminiscent vibe, but also standing out in that way. So the whole mythos behind of what they're going for here on that construction side of things is when you have them constructing, they're face down, and you can see how many turns are left in order to construct them, but you're not quite sure what they are as you're building them. when you flip them over, you get workers who get power facilities or soldiers to fuel as you're going along, attacking, lining up, matching, and potentially maneuvering how many are in a column in order to defeat your opponent. And it says 2-player, but you can also play 3 and 4. I mean, that's the question, in these sort of games, how do you feel with that aspect of things? Are you going to play this team style, right? Like Guards of Atlantis or anything along those lines with the back and forth, crisscross applesauce sort of turn order, if you will. I don't know. I'm always more preferential bias-wise for the 2-player side of things, but it's another one that will allow you more options if you have more of that player count as well. So we have tons. I wasn't kidding about this month, right? Another lifestyle game, Tsukuyumi, the Full Moon Down 2nd edition from Grey Fox, is coming back with a 2.5 version with new expansions, new content, and more of everything else in the area control game where the moon is fallen and everyone against everyone and everyone against the Tsukuyumi. And it's post-apocalyptic, no luck, strategically driven area control with asymmetric factions with their own special abilities and strengths and weaknesses. The 4-phase color system, where you just want the most victory points by occupying things and completing your own unique objectives. You just pre-populate the number of rounds you want to play and go. So how do you feel about this one? It had like the 1st edition and the 2nd edition. I know there's some delivery issues, but I think people really kind of like it. But it's a heavier asymmetric game. And again, with these games, you're going to need 4 to get the optimal player count and the optimization that comes from it. So is this one on your radar? Is this like a root sci-fi fantasy with more asymmetry? I don't know. Can you get it played? That'd be my biggest problem right now, like player count wise. I think the idea of it, again, is fantastic as someone who owns almost all of Root and doesn't get it played. Right? You're not me. But that's where I go because, again, almost a 2.5 hour to 3 hour playtime is a barrier to entry in addition. And so we're going to see what Grey Fox can do with this. And again, if you're in for some, are you in for more? Are you getting it all like you're getting Root? Is it too much of a good thing? Can you have 37 different expansions for this and still feel complete? Well, we'll see. Speaking of things you can feel complete about, the Euro game that is having everyone drooling or hyped up about now, and you've been seeing the Board Game Geek ads, I'm sure, Ada's Dream, collecting dice from a workshop rondo, your own personal board engine. Ooh, Alley Cat Games. Speaking words that are so fond. I mean, I don't know, right? I can't speak to this. How do you distinguish the heavy Euro games, right? Just like with Blood and Grimcoven. Just like with any of those. Just like Tsukuyumi and Root. Like, where is that line of you having too much, being too complex, not doing things differently enough? And from a heavier Euro game, right? Liege doesn't have a clue. Does not have a clue. But you know what? You can probably have a ton of playthroughs and gameplays and heavier board gamers talking about it all over the place at the time of the launch. Because again, it's going to be launching that first week of June as well. So that week, I'm going to be busy reading rule books, getting the roundup done that week. So let's go back to another one, a completely opposite direction, lighter style from Underdog Games is getting a 2nd edition. The 2nd edition, sometimes good, sometimes not. 2nd edition of Trekking the World. So in this edition, as you're going around, choosing your itinerary, gaining experience, collecting souvenirs from world-release spots as you maneuver and go, this now is going to make a few changes, including making it a draft and race style, where each turn you get to choose your itinerary, whereas the 1st edition was more set collect race, where you drew cards without thematic incorporation. In the new edition, you get special asymmetric powers for visiting destinations, and that you can play them for combos for bigger turns, and this one's also going to have a solo mode. So they say literally on the board game description, no rule is unchanged, but higher complexity. So they're saying it's not just a straightforward gateway game, more turn-turn, game-to-game variety, better story integration, and coming with an expansion that gives you asymmetric player powers like I mentioned. So we'll see. I mean, their newsletter I'm on the listing of, and I've been seeing plenty of comments and updates on it from that side of things. So we'll see if that matches when it launches. Then Tangerine Games has also given us a very kind of intriguing one of 1 to 2 hours, 1 to 6 players called Peaks, where you're just mountaineers venturing up the mountain with one of 3 essential actions. Rest to get your stamina back, prepare to go up mountain passes and equipment, or just climb and reap the rewards. And tag along gets you engaged when you're not your turn because, well, you get to do stuff as other people are taking their turns as well. And it's going to have a flag tactile experience to go along as you're marking your path along these tiles. So I mean, I think this one has sleeper hit written all over it. if you will, depending on what it comes out as. I think it reminds me a little bit in the same sense of like the recently delivered Leviathan Wilds, where it's going to fly under the radar and it's going to get probably eclipsed by some of these other ones, but it's still going to be freaking fantastic, and you should probably keep your eye on it if you're looking for something small indie-wise. Last up, wooden summoning creatures. And this is Piri Summoners from the designers of Moku. And this is, well, where you're a summoner trying to summon 3 of your spirit cards onto the board as a whole in the form of these little wooden creatures. And they're going with a new concept of a playing card system, suits, placing cards, pattern-based summoning, if you will. It reminds me a little bit of a different vibe of the Tash Kalar with the wooden meeples, only like wooden like figurines, wooden miniatures, if you will. Summon your 3 spirit cards. If no one can summon all of them, then the highest score wins the game. If players agree to end the game, question mark. Points are allocated based on who gets what summoned. So that's going to be part of it. And I wonder about the just feasibility of, you know, more of a handcrafted style of wooden miniatures. So we'll see. And you have strengths of suits, you have numerical values of suits, and you want to summon all of them as quickly as you can to the board in the first place. Not a whole lot of information at the time of me filming this, but just one I've kind of got on my radar, and we'll kind of see. Moku Tower, the dexterity-based game, you know, I think people like it, and it's going with their wood vibe that they've done previously. So we'll see where it goes and what happens when it launches and gets live. So there you go. June, wasn't kidding. Huge games all over the place. Well, at least in terms of, right? 4 games that could easily cost you all over $200 each. Right. So we'll see. Not even talking about the tail end of the month here with, you know, Seismic just launched and Oath with the new Foundations expansion, all of that stuff that just, you know, flew in at the end of the month that didn't even cross over here into June. That's still going to be running when all of these are launching too. So the competition is there for your wallet, folks. No shortage of stuff trying to steal your money in a nice way where you're giving it to them instead of actually being stolen, because nobody endorses that. I don't know. I'm just rambling here at the end. I have a headache. It's been a long day. That's all I got. Have a great freaking day. See you around. Thanks for watching. Stay classy.